The journey starts with a black and white sketch, which helps me quickly outline the basic structure and composition of the design. Now you might ask, why not jump straight into Blender to block out the composition and design? Of course, that's a valid approach, and many concept artists are increasingly using it. However, for me, starting with a black and white sketch in Photoshop is a more efficient way to focus on silhouettes and other design elements. It also allows me to dive deeper into the composition during this early stage. If you find composition challenging, I recommend checking my composition tutorial, where I share tips and techniques that might spark inspiration for you. Once the sketch is ready, I move on to Blender to block out the scene with simple base models and set up basic lighting. The key here is to translate the imaginative 2D space from the sketch into a 3D environment where I can refine and adjust the composition. After locking down the basic layout, I begin replacing the base models with either custom-made assets or 3D models that downloaded from internet. For the characters, I use the Human Generator add-on to create Ronins and Marvelous Designer for crafting and simulating clothing. If you're curious about how these tools work flow, check out my earlier tutorial. Many of the assets I used come from Quixel Bridge, while the trees are assets from the Botanique add-on. For free assets, platforms like Sketchfab are excellent resources to explore and download models. At this stage, I also enhance the scene by adding more lights, atmospheric effects like fog, and other details. Finally, I render the scene, which gives me a highly detailed image. But for most concept artists, this is only the beginning. The next step is Photoshop, where the real magic happens. This involves significant adjustments and painting to bring the piece to life. Herein how I typically approach this stage: tone and lighting adjustments. Photoshop offers incredible flexibility when it comes to overall adjustments, such as tweaking curves, adjusting saturation, and fine-tuning the contrast. These tools allow for nuance changes that, in my experience, it is not as easily achieved in Blender without diving into complex node subs. Shaping the space. I emphasize depth and atmosphere by adding fog layers, tweaking contrast, and adjusting brightness to guide the viewer focus and establish a clear hierarchy of elements. Adding details are essential. For example, I redo foreground elements like leaves using photo bashing techniques and custom brushes, while 3D assets can quickly populate the scene with content. But they don't always align with the artistic vision. Photoshop becomes the place where I refine and perfect the details to match the desired outcome. After countless tweaks and adjustments, the final image often looks significantly different from the initial Blender rendered. Photoshop is where the pieces truly come together. To sum it up, here is the basic workflow I followed for this piece. 1. Sketch. Start with the black and white sketch to establish the basic design and composition. Block out. Build the scene with simple models and lighting to refine the 2D sketch further. Asset creation and replacement. Replace basic models with assets, enhance lighting, and add atmospheric effects before rendering. Final in Photoshop. Finalize the artwork by adjusting tones, enhancing depth, adding details, photo bashing, and painting over the artwork where needed. Thanks for watching. More tutorials and valuable content are on the way. See you next time.